Let's talk to Rod Liddle, columnist at The Sun, of course, and a Spectator as well. Rod, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm a bit busy at the moment. I'm just filling in a questionnaire which has been sent to me by my local Tory MP asking me who I want to win the leadership election. As I've named Benito Mussolini as my choice, there's a little gap at the bottom for other, and you have to specify.
Yes.
So I've got Mussolini in first place and Kemi Badenoch in second.
I think it's a good team.
He takes notice of it.
I think it's a good team.
I think it's balanced, isn't it? It's balanced.
Well, I mean, the thing that I find most interesting is depending on who supports you, it's either the kiss of death or not. And Michael Gove has decided to go with Kemi Badenoch. I'm not sure whether that's good for her or not.
Well, no, I think that's probably actually quite good for Kemi Badenoch. But at the Spectator Party, it was very evident that Mike Hancock was being very supportive of Nadeem Zahawi, who seemed less impressed by that support than you might imagine, Mike. I don't know why, but that's what we saw there.
But isn't it all a bit ridiculous? Do you not find that here we are sitting talking about a job which has been done by somebody of late who you might not regard as perhaps the man with the greatest work ethic in the world, and we're now expected to believe that all the other people who were responsible with him for messing everything up could do a better job?
Yes. Yeah. That being said, I find myself a bit isolated from many of the Tories I know. I'm not a Tory, of course. I'm an SDP.
Yes.
But from many of the Tories I know, I think they have a better chance of winning with a new leader. Now, I'm at odds with my wife on this. I'm obviously at odds with Boris Johnson on this. And I'm at odds with a lot of people who voted for Boris Johnson in the first place. But I do think that there's quite a lot of disillusion out here, certainly up here in the Red Wall seats.
Yeah.
Where the temperature isn't going to climb above 40, mate, I'm telling you. I think that, I find it hard to imagine that with Kemi Badenoch in charge of the Conservative Party, or indeed Suella Braverman, that the Tories couldn't sweep home next time around.
Yes, because they do at least have a Conservative heart. At the middle of their kind of being, whereas many of them, I mean, I don't think Sunak's got a chance in hell, because Sunak is a guy who doesn't believe in lowering taxes, is a bloke who thinks that by making sure that we, spend even more public money, that's the way forward, and a bloke who's impossibly rich to the point where he couldn't really understand what it's like for ordinary people to live.
I think that's probably true. I mean, the interesting thing about Rishi Sunak is that he keeps stressing that he's a Thatcherite, but has given away more money than any other chancellor in the history of the world. I don't quite know. I mean, Rishi, I dare say, would say that he squares that by the fact that we faced two singularities, i.e. COVID. What was the other singularity? Oh, there wasn't really another singularity, just COVID, really, which meant that he had to spend it. What?
Fuel, I suppose you might say.
Yeah, the fuel prices. But the rise in fuel prices, that's not a singularity. This stuff happens, and it's happened before. And by and large, people have to try and get around it, have to try and look after themselves, have to try and budget. They don't expect the state to give them millions of pounds every time. I think that's the problem with the fuel stuff. But I do think that, people like Badenoch and Braverman, who have worked hard to get to the positions they're in, clearly, I think they're the two candidates who kind of grasp that the culture argument, the culture wars argument, is absolutely crucial. I think it's more crucial than the economy this time around, because frankly, the difference between what the candidates are saying on the economy isn't vast, is it, Mike? It's not. There's not clear blue water out there. Whereas I think if you went into the next election with Kemi or Suella against the knee-bending Keir Starmer and his inability to define what a woman is, then I think you do have clear blue water. And I think that's that would be an extremely attractive prospect for an awful lot of voters.
Yes. And in your Red Wall situation up there, what do you hear from people about Boris Johnson? Because there's still quite an awful lot of people who are very sorry that he's gone and who would rather he hadn't gone.
Not many in my neck of the woods. To a degree, the Boris is conflated with the Conservative Party. So I think that whatever way you look at it, the Conservative Party has lost votes as a consequence of this.
Yeah.
In that there will be some who still like Boris Johnson and believe that the Tories effected a putsch or a coup. The majority, though, think that Boris was displaying those typical Tory traits of do as I say, not as I do, and don't give a monkeys. Most of the time, I just hear people sick and tired of Boris, sick and tired of the whole thing. Whether they're sick and tired sufficiently to induce themselves to vote for that beacon of charisma, Keir Starmer, I'm not sure. I don't think he commends himself to people up here. He doesn't have the radical economic policies, which actually John McDonnell did have, and were quite popular in the poorer parts of the northeast. You know, tax the rich, nationalise the utilities, nationalise the rail services, nationalise the grouse moors. That all goes down quite well up here. Keir doesn't have any of that,
no.
But he has got all that utter rubbish, all that identity politics, identitarian stuff going on, which really doesn't commend itself either here or, I would suggest, Mike, anywhere else.
No. Also, his kind of fence-sitting abilities are not something that many people would admire, because people, regardless of what opinion you might have, I think they have more respect for you if you've actually got a reasonably well-held opinion, and you can try and convince people of your argument. But he doesn't have any of those. He doesn't actually have any opinions of any kind, as far as I can tell.
He doesn't seem to. I mean, in credit to, just one brief moment of credit for Sir Keir, which is that he was given a thankless task taking over a basket case of a party after 2019 and its Corbynista extravaganzas. And he's done a reasonably good job of getting rid of the real loonies and of making the party seem at least vaguely sensible on everything other than the culture issues. But there's nothing which actually makes you say, well, in the way that there was with duplicitously enough, Tony Blair. There's nothing really for the public to say, well, I really like the look of him. He's the man for me. This could be a new era, which is, of course, what everybody thought with Tony Blair. And it was a new era. We invaded half the world. So well done. So I don't think there are enough positive attractions for Sir Keir Starmer. But even so, they may still take an awful lot of those old Red Wall seats up here. Including possibly the one that I'm in, you know, which has only got a 1,300 majority. And I sincerely hope that doesn't happen, because some of the Labour MPs who are in seats up here are absolutely the most ghastly individuals you could imagine.
Well, I think that's the problem. I mean, I've got a list of MPs in front of me, which is supposedly this list that's been going around. I'm not going to mention any names, but it's the Tory Whip's office list, allegedly, of various peccadillos that belong to certain MPs, some of whom you've heard of, some of whom you haven't, but almost all of them involve something inappropriate. And I think that's the problem. We don't know enough about an awful lot of the Labour Party MPs, and I'm sure they're just as bad. And I think that's the other problem that we've got in this country at the moment, is there's an awful lot of disrespect for all MPs. And we were talking, of course, about who on earth is going to end up in the final two, in fact, for the ballot for who leads the country into the next sort of election. We're talking about 2 years away. I think it's almost impossible to say at the moment, Rod, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I think it is. Though once it comes down to the final two, whoever is to the right will get it. I mean, we don't know yet if Priti Patel is going to stand, for example.
And we're told she might be announcing this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, she stands a good chance amongst the members,
yes,
if not amongst the MPs. The MPs are a very sniffy bunch. And, you know, the great problem I see is that we get two people who are effectively social liberals, such as Jeremy Hunt and maybe Tom Tugendhat as the top two at the end of the MPs voting, which I think would be a problem. Even though I think Tom Tugendhat's a clever enough bloke. Jeremy Hunt, I would, good Lord, I cannot think of anyone worse to lead the Conservative Party than Jeremy Hunt.
Neither can I.
I heard an interview with him on LBC. I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday. It was. He said he was going to be steady but vigorous, which sounds as if he's on the job. I mean,
He was going to say, it sounds like one of those characters that's in the list that I've got here, which
indeed.
Almost inevitably ends with inappropriate with women.
Inappropriate with women, yeah. But it was just this sense of entitlement, which I think Jeremy Hunt has, and also, of course, the fact that nobody in the red wall seats will vote for him ever, given his stance on Brexit and his attempts to get rid of Brexit. You know, so it's very, very hard to see. Tom Tugendhat slightly different in that we don't know that much about him. It is nice to have someone, with an IQ above a bowl of Angel Delight whip.
Yes,
and Tugendhat does have that.
And he was in the military, so we know that he's quite a principled character because of that.
Yes, we do. And also, something else which commends him very much to me is that I wrote something about him in the Sunday Times, which was wholly inaccurate recently. And he sent me a very nice email pointing out that it was wholly inaccurate and saying, but don't worry about it, old chap. which is, if I'd done that about John Major, the nasty, chippy little man would be bouncing around the lawyers' courts by now.
Yes. I particularly enjoy it when John Major gets on his moral high horse, because there are those of us who might remember one or two episodes in his career, which are best not mentioned before breakfast for fear of putting people off their breakfast.
Well, indeed.
And I'm not even talking about Edwina Curry, I'm talking about all of his various members of his cabinet, the Back to Basics Brigade, who seem to think that Back to Basics meant something like removing your trousers before you do anything else.
Yeah, no, indeed, the Back to Basics Brigade, followed by the brown envelope brigade.
Yes, exactly right.
There isn't a Conservative politician I dislike more than John Major. However, for those Conservatives who are sort of in dread of what's going to happen to their party and have already kind of consigned the next election to Sir Keir and the knee benders, John Major, of course, does offer the suggestion that it might not go that way. I mean, he was very unfancied as a leader when he was elected, and he stopped Neil Kinnock getting the 92 election, and did so by some margin,
But was that not more about Kinnock kind of kiboshing his own hopes by doing all sorts of ridiculous things, falling in the sea for one, and then, of course, the famous Nuremberg-style rally?
All right. Yes. I'm probably alone on this channel in having a degree of affection for Neil, given that I was one of the speechwriters for the Labour front bench between 1983 and 1987. But you may be right. Those were the days, mate. But I think, yes, you're right to a degree, that it was more a vote against Kinnock than it was a vote for Major. But nonetheless, you could see the same thing happening next time around anyway with Sir Keir.
Yes.
Because I don't think Sir Keir has that weight and compulsion amongst people that they would vote for him. I just cannot see it. Yeah.
And also, in a way, the Tories removing Boris may work out in their favour, because Keir Starmer's only real kind of campaigning slogan is that he's got integrity and the other bloke doesn't. Well, guess what? He's gone now. So if you get somebody else in who you can't accuse of not having any integrity, then there goes your argument, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And it's worse than that for Labour, of course, because yet again, the Conservative Party, if it elects Suella Braverman or Kemi Badenoch, here, look, we've got a young, formerly working class, immigrant black woman leading our party. How are you lot getting on in Labour,
Yeah.
Where's your commitment?
Well, it's no surprise, of course, that they haven't appointed a woman as leader, because they don't know what one is.
No, indeed. That's a very, very good point indeed. But if you read someone like Suzanne Moore, who is a dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporter or suddenly on the left in The Spectator saying, you know, why can't the Labour Party, you know, find a woman or someone from an ethnic minority background to lead the party? Are they racist? It should just at last come to the conclusion, it's taken so long, Suzanne, come to the conclusion that there is something a little bit racist and sexist in the way that Labour views women and ethnic minority people. And there has been. They treat them as clients. They treat them as needy children. You know, it's a racist view of ethnic minorities and women. They think they are people who need the Labour Party to advance in society. And people like Sajid Javid and Suella Braverman and Zahawi and so on don't need the Labour Party and have shown that they don't need this patronising, condescending toss which Labour sort of shovels over the heads of working class black and Asian minorities.
Yes. Well, I remember there being a very famous poster back in the sort of, I think it was the early 80s. It must have been while Thatcher was around. It might have been in the 82 election, I think. And it was, I was actually working for an Asian magazine at the time, and there was an Asian businessman holding a briefcase, and it was an advert for the Tory party, and it said, the Labour Party calls you black, we call you British. And it was brilliant, because it just cut right through all of that nonsense.
Yes, no, that's absolutely right. And I think we are beginning to see a change, just as we saw a change in America, and we tend to follow America in this respect, that more and more, particularly Muslim, but also black and Asian British people are moving away from the Labour Party. And it used to be that the Muslim vote went exclusively to the Labour Party, you know, without any questions asked. Sometimes propelled in that direction by local imams and so on. But more and more Muslim people are looking at the Labour Party, and they may have done very well in their lives, made themselves into, you know, big businessmen and businesswomen, and they also loathe the identitarian politics of the Labour Party, particularly when it comes to the schooling of children and transgenderism and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why on earth should we vote for this stuff? And we've seen that happening with the Hispanic vote in the USA and, to a degree, the black vote in the USA. So I think that's the next thing which is going to happen over here, and it can only help those parties which are socially conservative.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Rod, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed, as ever. Rod Liddle.